Hey guys, welcome back to CV Fire TV. Also, welcome back to our series. If you don't know, we are doing a series on submission. So the last video we looked at Jonah. We looked at the meaning of submission. We found out that submission is a heart issue, and we linked it back to when God told Samuel that it is not the outward appearance, but it is the heart that He looks at. So we have established that the Lord looks on the heart, and if we are submitted in our hearts first. And so this week we're going to be looking at King Saul in 1 Samuel 15. I am not going to read you all of it. I'm just going to read the first three, and then we are going to the first three verses, and then we are going to study and look at some different key points, and look at submission in this, and look at the consequences when you do and do not do what God has asked you to do. And so 1 Samuel 15 verses 1 to 3, and it says, "And Samuel said to Saul, 'The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey.'" So the first few verses, the word of the Lord. This is the Lord speaking through the prophet Samuel to King Saul, giving him instructions in what to do, what the mission is, what his assignment is, and what he needs to do. So I'm going to read verse 2 and 3. It says, thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. So Amalek they are a band of terrorists, and what happened when Israel came out and were going into the promised land, they kept attacking Israel, and they kept stealing Israel's wealth and their families. And so anytime they could, they will go and cause trouble with Israel. Now, the Amalekites lived by attacking other nations and going off with their wealth and their families. And so that's how they made their living. That is how they lived. But also in the land, what happened was they were idolatrous to religious practices. And what God knew and what God saw was that they kept attacking Israel, and they would eventually make Israel's hearts turn away from God. So they were a threat. They became a threat because there was a danger, there was a chance that they would turn Israel's hearts because of their idolatrous ways. And also they kept on attacking Israel even when they were in the promised land. And so when the King Saul became king, the Lord told him, go and destroy them. The only way God knew to protect, well, it's not the only way, but the way God chose to protect his people, their hearts, and to annihilate the threat of Israel's hearts being turned away from God, he told Saul to annihilate them. He told Saul to kill, to devote to destruction. As it says in verse 3, devote to destruction all that they have. Now, when you look at the word devote means to concentrate on a particular pursuit, to dedicate. So the Lord was saying to King Saul, dedicate yourself to destroying, to destruction. Destruction is to annihilation, extinction. So the Lord was saying to King Saul, I want you to dedicate yourself in making these people extinct. I want them wiped off the face of the earth because what they have done to Israel and what they keep doing and their idolatrous ways. I want you to annihilate them, devote to destruction. And then we carry on reading. And then later on in the verse, it also says, do not spare them. To spare something is to leave uninjured, to save from strain, to refrain from harming. So he's saying, do not go lightly on them. I want you to inflict pain. I want you to kill them. I want you to annihilate them. I want you to destroy them off the face of the earth, make them extinct. So this is what he said. This is what the Lord said. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Everything, everyone has to go. And this was the instruction of the Lord. And this is going to be important for later on. So we understand what the instruction of the Lord was. We understand that the Lord had made it very clear to Saul, knowing the background of the Amalekites and Israel. The Lord made his instruction very clear to King Saul. So when we get to verse 8 now, verse 8 says, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. Verse 9 also says, but Saul and the people spared. They spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fattened calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless they devoted to destruction. So in verse 8, what we see is that Saul already failed the mission. Because the Lord says to him, I want you to dedicate yourself to annihilating these people. And at the start, it says he took Agag. He took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive. So from when he's taken the king alive already, we know and we see that, or we should see or know automatically, that the mission had already been failed. Because he went against the instruction of the Lord. And in verse 8, what we see also is that Saul's heart was not with God anymore. For when Saul took Agag alive, we see that Saul's heart was turned away from God. We saw that he turned his back on God. His heart was gone away from God. And he worshipped himself. He worshipped his wants. He went with what he wanted to do. He went with what was best for him. His will was better than God's will in the moment. His will was more attractive. His will caused him, his wants and his will caused him to come out of submission to God. So now he's been disobedient and the mission has already failed. And what he does in verse 9 is that he spared. So as we discovered earlier on, to spare is to leave uninjured, to save from strain, to refrain from harming. So he spared Agag and the best of everything that he had. The best calves, the best oxen and the best sheep. He spared, and the best lamb. And he wouldn't destroy it, but he took it for himself. Now if you go back to verse 3 says, devote to destruction, dedicate yourself to destroying them. Do not spare, but kill both, man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey, everything. So here is what Saul has done. Saul has done his own thing. He's turned away from God. He's come out of submission to God. And then we look at verse 10, when the Lord came to Samuel and said to Samuel, I regret. And now when we see that word, it says, I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And then it says that, and Samuel was angry and he cried to the Lord all night. So when we look at it, it says, I regret. Now, regret, we think, did God make an error? I think God made an error, but he is a God. And we say that God is a God that he doesn't lie. He doesn't make mistakes. So what kind of regret are we talking about? And when you look up the definition, it means disappointed, to be sad, to grieve. So he was disappointed and he was sad that Saul had turned his heart away from him. And ultimately, Samuel felt what God was feeling, as well as it said he cried all night to the Lord. He cried all night and God said, I regret. I am sad. I'm disappointed. How many of us How many of us would feel a type of way if the Lord said to us that he was disappointed in us, that he regretted putting us in a certain position, he regretted sending us to a certain place, knowing that we were going to do our own thing? How many of us would feel broken if we found out that God was disappointed in us? And the reality is, many of us have been put in positions and we have turned away from God. We've moved away from what he wants for us. And his heart is actually grieved at this moment because we, his people, we don't love him as we should love him. We don't listen to him. We're not obedient to him. So God is feeling grief and he's disappointed in us because we, his people, have turned away from him to other things, to other people. We've worshipped false gods, whether it be Instagram, whether it be a pastor, whether it be a teacher, whether it be an Instagram model, whether it be a celebrity, whether it be your parents. You've worshipped other people and other things other than God. And then you look at verse 12, and verse 12 says to us, and Samuel arose early to meet Saul in the morning, and it was told to Samuel, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument. He set up a statue for himself, and turned and passed on and went down to Gilgal. So Saul's now turned away from God. The mission is failed, and now he's worshipping himself. He's got a statue for himself, of himself, and he's worshipping himself because he thinks the mission is past. He thinks the mission is complete because he devoted to destruction what was worthless. But he's not realizing that the mission's failed. The mission's failed because he didn't follow God's full commandment. He didn't follow God's full instruction. He didn't perform God's full instruction. And so now he doesn't even know that he's failed. How many of us know when something is complete, when we've done it to the T? How many of us are celebrating and we haven't even performed what God has told us to do? We haven't executed God's plan the way he wanted it, the way he told us to do it. How many of us are happy, are going around and saying that you've done this, you've done that, not knowing that you actually haven't done anything, that whatever you've done, it's not done to its full degree, it's not done to its full capacity because you haven't followed the instruction of God. So in man's eyes, you may have done great, but in God's eyes, you failed the mission. How many of us? And then verse 13 says, and Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, blessed be to you the Lord, for I have performed the commandment of the Lord. He said that he's performed the commandment of the Lord. So now what he's done is he's gone and he's lying to Samuel now. As if Samuel doesn't know, as if Samuel is not the prophet, the watchman, the seer in the land, who walks with God habitually, who's hearing from God all the time, always seeing what's going on. He's gone and he's lied to Samuel. And verse 14 is interesting because Samuel says, what then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears and the lowing of the oxen I can hear? So Samuel can hear. So Samuel knows that he's lying. So Samuel is checking him, is asking him questions. Why can I hear the sheep? Why can I hear the oxen that the Lord told you to destroy? The Lord told you to dedicate yourself to destroying it. So why is it that I can hear the oxen or I can hear the sheep? Why is it? And verse 15 says, Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction. Now we're going to unpick this one a bit because it says they. Who is they? So now it's the blame game. Because when you say they, you're speaking about other people. You're speaking about someone else or something else. So you see, when we come out of submission, what happens is we do the blame game. We play the blame game. And I can back it up because in Genesis 3, when Eve ate the fruit and Adam ate the fruit, when God came and asked them, did you eat the fruit? What happened was Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. The serpent took the punishment, but also Adam and Eve were punished. But what you saw Adam blame first, and then you saw Eve blame. And what us coming out of submission to God, coming from under God, what happens is we always blame someone. Always someone else's fault. They took me out of submission. They made me not follow the instruction from God. So now it's the blame game from when he said they. And he said the people spared. He said the people spared. But then when you look at verse 8, it said they took Agag. He took Agag alive. And then he's blaming the people, and he's really put the people in it, or trying to put the people in it. And so he said the people spared the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice to your God, not my God. So he's not even claiming Jesus Christ. He's not even claiming God. What he's doing is we took the best things to sacrifice to your God, not my God, but your God. But the word of the Lord was to dedicate yourself to annihilating these people and everything that they have. And he has gone and blamed the people and kept the sheep and the oxen, or the best of them anyway. And so this reflects what we do. What we do is when we come out of submission, we always blame someone else. But my finances. But this person said this. But the situation changed. What was the instruction from God? And many of us need to go back to the instruction of God and find out what it is that he said and execute it. It doesn't matter what the situation looks like or what is presented before you. We need to be obedient and continue to be submitted and execute the instruction of the Lord when it is given to us. And then we go to verse 18. And this is what Samuel was saying to Saul. He said, and the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go, dedicate yourself to destruction, to the extinction, alienation of the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. To be consumed means to be destroyed. Go and dedicate yourself to them, to destroying them until they are no more. And then he's asked, why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord? So now he's being checked. Now he's being asked the question, why have you done this? Why have you kept the spoils of the land when the Lord clearly told you to destroy everything and everyone? And verse 20 says, and Saul said to Samuel, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I devoted the Amalekites to destruction. Verse 21, but the people took the spoiled sheep and oxen and the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. What we see in verse 20 is that Saul has misunderstood. So now we have to ask the question, did Saul really understand the instruction? Did he interpret it correctly? Because the instruction was very clear. But what Saul's gone and done is Saul has gone and changed it. Because when we look at verse 3, it says, now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Kill everything. Saul says in verse 20, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on a mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag. I have brought him. I've taken him from where he is, and he's here. I've brought him out of his land, and he's in our custody. I've taken him from where he is and brought him to you. That was not the instruction. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I have devoted the Amalekites to destruction. So now he's got it wrong already. Now he is wrong. And for when he interpreted it wrong, the actions were always going to follow. When you interpret something, you're always going to do it how you think it should be done. But the Lord actually says to him, destroy dedicate yourself to destroying. Verse 21. And then he blames the people again. So now he got the information wrong. He's misinterpreted the instructions of God. And through that misinterpretation, his actions became wrong. He did the wrong thing. How many of us interpret things wrong and then our actions follow? And the actions are actually the wrong thing. We say the wrong thing. We go to the wrong place. We do the wrong thing. How many of us do that? And then he blames the people again, the blame game. He said that the people took them. I didn't take them. The people took them. But he's the king. He's in charge. And the instruction was given to the head, the leader. So if you're a leader of something and you're misinterpreting what the Lord is saying, your actions are always going to follow, and the people are going to copy what you do. The people are going to follow you. And if you have the cheek or the audacity to blame the people, then you're not fit to be a leader. You're not fit to be a king. You're not fit to lead a people. And so we look at Samuel's response. And Samuel says, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey, everyone's famous line, everyone's favorite line, to obey is better than to sacrifice. Many of us say to obey is better than to sacrifice, but how many of us obey? How many of us are willing to be submitted to God? How many of us are willing to obey what God is saying for us in the next stages of our lives? What to do with someone, how to maneuver through our journey, how to execute the mission. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the Lord, the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. How many of us are rejected from doing something that we were told to do? How many of us have been rejected by God? How many of us are not doing what God has told us to do because we, first of all, disobeyed him? And because we disobeyed him and we continue to disobey him, he has rejected us from doing something. We haven't reached our full potential. We haven't gone further into our next career. We haven't worked with a certain type of people, and we're not able to move up in life because the Lord has rejected you at that point. Because you were disobedient, we are disobedient. Why? How many of us can say that? And then verse 24, it looks and Samuel says, I have sinned. Saul says, I have sinned to Samuel. For I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people. How many of us fear people, fear their opinions? How many of us have come out of submission because we fear? Because what he's saying now is, because I feared the people, because I feared the people, I came out of submission to God. And his excuse is he feared the people, but Saul did what he wanted to do. Saul went with his will and his want. How many of us go with what we want? We go with our plan. I've made a plan for life, so I'm just going to go with it. And God's told you, no, do it this way. And you said, no, I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing it my way. I'm doing it how I want to do it. And then when it's brought to your attention, when people bring it up to you and ask you, why have you done that? When the Lord is asking you why, you then blame people. We blame something else or someone else for us coming out of submission. It's time for us to own up. It's time for us to continue to be obedient to God. And after he's said it, Saul then asked Samuel to come back with him to the people just to show that everything's all right, everything's cool. Yeah, no, we're brethren, yeah, all of that. But Samuel said, no, I'm not going to return with you to the people, because the Lord, what you've done is too great. Why is it that you want me to return with you and you have disobeyed? You out and out disobeyed God. And many of us want the people to continue to walk with us. We want God to continue to walk with us even when we are in our disobedience. We want people to to give us a pardon. We want people to accept what we are doing, but what we are doing is wrong. We are in disobedience, wanting people to accept us, wanting people to say what you're doing is right. And when people call you on it, you ask for forgiveness, but you still want them to walk with you. Some of us have put relationships in jeopardy because of our disobedience. And when Samuel said to Saul, no, it says it in verse 26 says, and Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. 27. As Samuel turned to go away, Saul seized the skirt of his robe and it tore. So now Samuel's gone to walk away. And as he's gone to walk away, Saul has grabbed his clothing and has torn his clothing. And in tearing his clothing, then comes verse 28, and it says, and Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you this day and has given it to a neighbor of yours who is better than you. Already I know, whoever's going to watch this, what has God brought someone else to do that you should have been doing? How many of us should be doing something? How many of us should be in a career, a certain type of career? How many of us should be in business? How many of us should be models, should be YouTubers, should be preachers, should be accountants, should be teachers? How many of us should be doing it? But because of our disobedience, someone else who is better suited is in it. So the opportunity is gone now. How many of us have forfeited our place? So someone else has come in. God has brought someone else in who's willing to be obedient, who's willing to follow, who has a heart for him. How many of us? I'm going to leave it there for now, but the Lord is asking, how many of us? The Lord is asking us, he's telling us that we need to submit ourselves to him. Because in not submitting to him, what happens is that we start to forfeit. We start to blame other people. We start to mess up our lives. And many of us have come into 2020 with our lives ruined. Many of us are going into the 3rd month and we're still fighting what we were fighting last year, early last year, mid last year, and late last year. Many of us are still fighting. Many of us are still struggling because we refuse to submit to God. And in us not submitting to God, we're stuck. We're stuck and we cannot move. And there are things that are being taken away from us because we are not ready. There is no capacity for it. And the Lord is saying that when you submit to me, what will happen is everything will open up to you. I will open up the new ideas. I will open up new opportunities to you. Many of us are going to get opportunities thinking that they are God-given, and they are not God-given. Because the Lord has been trying to deal with you about something in your life. He's been trying to purge some of your character. He's been trying to shape you and mold you into what he wants you to be in this new decade. But we have refused him and we continue to fight him. We continue to go with what we want to do and not what he wants to do. And so in us doing that, we are forfeiting our place in what should be ours, in what God has for us. Yes, God has made you a promise. But us as humans, we mess it up. God has a perfect plan for us, but it's us who mess up the plan. It's us who want to do our own thing and go our own way. And the Lord is trying to get you into line with his vision, with his plan. It's not him getting into line with us. It's us getting into line with him. It's us submitting to him. Submitting our wants, our wills, our friends, our finances, our jobs, our families, our girlfriends, our boyfriends, our marriages, our relationships, everything. He wants you to submit your title. You're an accountant, all right? Submit it to God. You're a judge, all right? Go and submit it to God. You're a businessman, all right? Go and submit it to God. Are you willing to submit that to God and watch God work? Or are you going to hold on to it and take your title everywhere you go? And then what's going to happen is you'll take your title right to the grave and not fulfill what you should have fulfilled. This is the word of the Lord for us in this time, in this season. Submission. He's calling us to submit. Many of us have not submitted and he's calling us to submit to him. So I hope this has helped you, and we'll see you next time on CV Fire.